Kadızade Mehmed Efendi, a prominent advocate of Orthodox Islam in the 17th century, and Abdülmecid Sivasi, the renowned Sufi thinker of the Halveti Order from the 17th century, come together in an imaginative simulation.
Zahit Bizi Tan Eyleme, hay hay hak ismin okur dilimiz. Hey canım, hak ismin okur dilimiz. Eyvallah, hey dost.
Do not condemn us, O ascetic. We call upon God's name with devotion, with all our being. We begin our journey with the verses of this Turkish ilahi, written by Mehmet Muhiddin, tracing the profound debate between the Kadızadeli's and the Sivasis in the Ottoman Empire. The Kadızadeli's, led by Kadızade Mehmed Efendi, took a strong stance against religious innovations, while the Sivasis, represented by Sufi thinker Abdülmecid Sivasi, sought to preserve the mystical practices of Sufism. Our journey spans two iconic cities, Istanbul, where Orthodox teachings and Sufi practices coexisted, and Konya, the spiritual center of Sufism and home to the Mevlevi order. In these dialogues, Kadızadeli and Sivasi clash over three fundamental questions: the legitimacy of Sufi rituals, the role of Ibn Arab's philosophy, and the definition of innovation, bidʿah. We draw ourselves on Madeline C. Zilfi's article, The Kadızadeli's Discordant Revivalism in 17th Century Istanbul, and book of Ahmed Kara Mustafa, God's Unruly Friends, Dervish Groups in the Islamic Middle Period. Join us as we engage in an endless discussion that transcends centuries. The legitimacy of Sufi rituals.
Assalamu alaikum, Sivasi Efendi.
Wa alaikumussalam, Mehmed Efendi.
Our beloved Prophet did not dance or sing to get closer to God. These practices are innovations that lead us away from the true path. The companions, who were the best of generations, did not partake in such acts. By introducing these practices, you are inviting confusion and deviation from the simplicity of faith. We must adhere strictly to the Sharia without adding to it.
Innovation, my dear Mehmed Efendi, is not inherently harmful. There is a distinction between a harmful innovation and one that brings believers closer to God. The sama, the whirling, the music, all are but tools to dissolve the ego and experience divine love. The Prophet may not have danced, but the Quran speaks of different ways to worship and remember God. The form may change, but the essence, love, and devotion remains constant.
But this is not the way of the companions. The Prophet's path is one of simplicity and strict adherence to the Sharia. By introducing these innovations, you open the door to heresy. It is not about personal feelings or mystical experiences. It is about obedience. How do we guide the masses when they see scholars adopting practices foreign to the tradition? There is no guarantee that these innovations will not lead people astray, corrupting the purity of their faith.
The Sharia is our anchor, yes, but the human soul yearns for a deeper connection. Ibn Arabi taught us that love transcends the apparent forms, guiding us to the hidden realities. Music, dance, these are but vessels that help us glimpse the divine. Are we not to find different ways to express our devotion? For some, the path is prayer alone. For others, it is through contemplation. And for others still, it is through artistic expression and movement.
You speak of love, Abdülmecid Efendi, but without strict adherence to the Prophet's way, your love is misdirected. The masses look to us for guidance, and if we permit innovations, we risk leading them astray. The companions were close to the Prophet, and yet never found the need for music or dance to reach God. Why do we need more than what the best of generations needed? This so-called elevation could just be a distraction, leading away from the straight path.
The path to God is not one, but many. The law provides structure, yes, but the heart knows ways that reason does not. Music speaks to that heart, and through it we may find our way to Him. Those who see us may think us mad, but our madness is better than reason. The divine is beyond the grasp of intellect alone. It must be felt, experienced, and loved. That is why we whirl, why we sing, to remember and to lose ourselves in His love.
And yet, Abdülmecid, we must not forget our duty as guides. The Prophet and his companions never needed these additional practices to reach the heights of spirituality. What example are we setting for those who come after us? If we stray even slightly, what guarantee is there that the next generation will not stray further? The purity of our faith lies in its simplicity and directness, not in embellishments.
But the Prophet also said, actions are judged by intentions. If the intention is pure, and the practice brings one closer to God, should it not be embraced rather than shunned? The human spirit is diverse, and so too are the ways in which it connects to the divine. We do not seek to replace the Sharia, but to complement it, to deepen the spiritual journey for those whose hearts yearn for more. Let us not limit the paths that lead to God.
Debate 2. The role of Ibn Arabi's philosophy.
Ibn Arabi was one of the greatest spiritual minds of our tradition. His teachings on divine love and the interconnectedness of all creation offer a profound insight into the reality of God. He showed us that the path to understanding God is through the heart, and that every aspect of existence reflects the divine. His works, particularly Futuhat al-Makkiyah and Fusus al-Hikam, have illuminated the way for those seeking a deeper connection with the divine.
Ibn Arabi's works are filled with ambiguities and concepts that stray from the straightforward teachings of the Quran and the Sunnah. His idea of wahdat al-wujud, the unity of existence, can easily lead people into misunderstanding the distinction between the creator and creation. The average believer may not have the capacity to grasp these subtleties, and instead of bringing them closer to God, these teachings may lead them astray, confusing the created with the creator.
Wahdat al-wujud is often misunderstood even by scholars. It does not mean that the creator and the creation are one and the same, but rather that all of existence is a reflection of God's attributes. Ibn Arabi's intention was never to blur the line between God and His creation, but to emphasize that everything we see, everything we experience, is a sign pointing to the divine. The depth of his teachings is not meant to replace Sharia, but to give those who are capable of understanding it a richer appreciation of the divine presence.
But what of those who are not capable of understanding it? What of the common people, whose faith may be shaken by such lofty and abstract ideas? Ibn Arabi's philosophy might inspire a few, but it can mislead many more. The Prophet's teachings were simple, clear, and accessible to all. We should not complicate matters of faith with esoteric ideas that may confuse and misguide the masses. The risk of leading people into shirk, associating partners with God, is too great.
The teachings of Ibn Arabi are not for everyone, that much is true, but they serve an important purpose for those who are seeking more, those whose souls are restless for a deeper understanding. The Prophet himself spoke in different ways to different people, offering simple parables to some and more profound wisdom to others. We must cater to the diversity of seekers. Ibn Arabi's philosophy opens a door to a level of divine intimacy that many long for, a way to experience the oneness of God in every aspect of life.
Yet this door you speak of is not without its dangers. When people start to see the divine in everything, they may forget the transcendence of God, His separateness from His creation. God is above and beyond anything we can conceive or imagine. The danger of Ibn Arabi's teachings is that they make God too accessible, too immanent, blurring the line between creator and created. We must uphold the balance of transcendence and immanence as laid out by the Prophet, without drifting into philosophical complexities that jeopardize the clarity of Tawheed.
The balance you speak of is precisely what Ibn Arabi sought to convey. He never denied God's transcendence. He emphasized it. But he also reminded us of God's closeness, that He is nearer to us than our jugular vein. His teachings are an invitation to see the signs of God everywhere, to deepen our love and awe for the Creator. Yes, it is a path fraught with challenges, but for those willing to walk it, the rewards are profound. We cannot deprive those seekers of such a path simply because it is difficult.
And yet, the Prophet's mission was to simplify faith, to make it accessible to all, not just a select few. Islam is meant to be a straightforward path that any believer, regardless of their intellectual or spiritual capacity, can follow. We must protect that simplicity. Let those who seek deeper knowledge do so, but not at the cost of the masses who need clarity and straightforward guidance to remain firm in their faith.
True, the Prophet simplified the message for the masses, but he also allowed space for those who wish to dive deeper. Ibn Arabi is for those who are willing to make that dive, to explore the ocean of divine love and knowledge. We must guide those individuals too, and provide them with the means to understand God at a deeper level, without losing the foundational simplicity of faith.
True, actions are judged by intentions, but intentions must align with the teachings of the Prophet. We cannot allow every new practice to be justified under the guise of spirituality. There must be a boundary, a line that ensures we remain within the framework laid down by the Prophet. Without such limits, we risk falling into error, no matter how noble our intentions may be.
The boundaries are there, Mehmed Efendi, but they are broader than you perceive. The mystic's journey is one of depth, of surrender, and of seeking the divine through love. The law is the foundation, but love is the tower that reaches toward the heavens. We must allow for diversity in devotion, for God has created us with different hearts, each seeking Him in its own way.
Debate 3. The definition of innovation. Bid'ah.
Innovation, or bid'ah, is a dangerous deviation from the straight path laid out by the Prophet. The Prophet himself warned us against any additions to our religion, as every innovation is misguidance. The practices and beliefs we follow must be those that were clearly established by the Prophet and his companions, without alteration or addition. By allowing innovations, no matter how harmless they seem, we open the door to endless changes that can lead people away from the true teachings of Islam.
Not all innovations are harmful, Mehmed Efendi. The Prophet spoke against harmful innovations, those that distort the religion or lead people astray. But there are also beneficial innovations, those that serve to bring us closer to God. For example, the compilation of the Quran into a single book was an innovation, yet it was done to preserve the Word of God. The key is understanding the intent and the impact of an innovation. If it helps people remember God and live righteously, then it cannot be deemed harmful.
The compilation of the Quran was not an innovation in the sense that it altered the teachings, it was a necessity to preserve what was already revealed. What you advocate for is introducing new practices, which have no basis in the Quran or the Sunnah. Such practices, even if they seem beneficial, can gradually erode the purity of the faith. The Prophet's way was complete and perfect. Any addition implies that there is something lacking in what he brought. We must protect the integrity of our faith by avoiding any changes.
I understand your caution, but we must also be flexible enough to address the needs of the community as times change. The concept of beneficial bid'ah, or bid'ah hasana, is not about changing the essence of our faith, but about adapting to new circumstances in ways that help us grow closer to God. For example, establishing schools and madrasas for systematic religious education was not something explicitly practiced by the Prophet, yet it has become a crucial part of preserving and spreading Islamic knowledge. Such innovations are meant to strengthen the community and deepen our faith, not distort it.
But where do we draw the line, Abdülmecid? Once we start accepting innovations, even those deemed beneficial, we risk a slippery slope where anything can be justified. Today it is schools and gatherings. Tomorrow it could be practices that have no place in our religion. The Prophet's guidance is enough for us, and we should not feel the need to introduce anything new, even under the guise of benefit. True piety lies in adhering to what has been clearly established without adding our interpretations or practices.
The line, Mehmed Efendi, lies in intention and adherence to the core principles of the faith. We are not suggesting that anything and everything be accepted. Innovations must be scrutinized to ensure they do not contradict the essence of the Quran and the Sunnah. The scholars of the past have allowed for practices that help the community flourish and maintain their connection to God. If an innovation brings people closer to God, enhances their understanding, and remains within the framework of Sharia, then it should be seen as a tool for spiritual growth rather than a deviation.
The danger is too great, Abdülmecid Efendi. The Prophet said that the best guidance is his guidance and that anything added beyond it is misguidance. Our duty as scholars is to protect the community from such misguidance by keeping the faith pure and simple as it was during the Prophet's time. We cannot allow for subjective interpretations to justify new practices. The path to God is already clear. There is no need for additions.
And yet, the reality of the human condition is that we are always growing, learning and seeking deeper connections with the divine. Innovations, when approached with caution and wisdom, can help nurture that connection. The essence of our faith remains unchanged, but the ways in which we express and understand it can evolve. We must trust in the ability of sincere believers to discern what brings them closer to God while maintaining the integrity of the core teachings.
The debates we have explored today are not relics of the past. They continue to resonate within our communities. The tension between orthodoxy and mysticism, between preservation and innovation, is still very much alive today. This diversity of thought, however, is also what enriches our understanding of faith and allows for multiple paths to flourish. Pluralism is an essential aspect of the spiritual journey, offering different ways for believers to connect with God. As we conclude, let us return to the Turkish ilahi written by Muhyi that has framed our discussion. We will now listen to and interpret the rest of the verses of Zahit Bizi Tan Eyleme, allowing the words and their meanings to resonate with us in light of these historical debates.
Zahit bizi tan eyleme, hay hay hak ismin okur dilimiz. Hey canım, hak ismin okur dilimiz. Eyvallah.
In this verse, the term Zahit refers to an ascetic, someone who focuses on outward piety and may be critical of those whose spirituality takes different forms. The poet is telling the ascetic not to judge or look down upon them. Bizi Tan Eyleme. He emphasizes that their tongues constantly recite the name of God, Hak ismin okur dilimiz. This means that even if their external expressions of devotion differ from what the ascetic might consider proper, they are genuinely devoted to God.
Sakın efsane söyleme. Hay hay Hazrete varır yolumuz. Hey canım, hey canım, Hazrete varır yolumuz. Eyvallah, hey, hey dost.
The poet tells the ascetic, efsane söyleme, not to spread false stories or make superficial criticisms about the Sufi way of life. The phrase, Hazrete varır yolumuz, means that the path of the Sufis ultimately leads to the divine presence. This emphasizes that the spiritual practices and seemingly unconventional ways of the Sufis are, in fact, deeply rooted in the intention of reaching God.
Erenlerin çoktur yolu. Hay hay cümlesine delik beni. Hey canım, hey canım, cümlesine delik beni. Eyvallah, hey dost.
The poet here speaks about the many paths that lead to the divine. The term erenler refers to saints or spiritually enlightened beings, and the line acknowledges that each of these saints may have their own distinct way of reaching the divine. The phrase cümlesine dedik beli means to all of them we have said yes, signifying acceptance of all these diverse paths. The poet emphasizes the pluralistic nature of the spiritual journey, where different approaches are all valid as long as they lead to the ultimate goal of divine union.
Bizi sanır deli. Hay hay usludan yedir delimiz. Hey canım, hey canım, usludan yedir delimiz. Eyvallah, hey, hey dost.
The poet states that those who see us may think we are mad. This line refers to how people often perceive the ecstatic and unconventional expressions of Sufis as madness. The poet embraces this madness, implying that it is preferable to the rational restraint. In Sufism, divine love often transcends the boundaries of ordinary rationality, and those deeply in love with God may appear irrational to the outside world.
İsa'na olayım ben. Hay hay aşık isen cana minnet. Hey canım, hey canım, aşık isen cana minnet. Eyvallah, hey hey dost.
The poet, addressing himself as Muhyi, is offering his help and support to those on the path of divine love. Aşık isen cana minnet means, if you are a lover, it is an honor to give your soul. This verse conveys the idea that for those who are in love with God, there is no greater honor than sacrificing one's entire being for the beloved. It emphasizes the spirit of selfless devotion and total surrender that is central to Sufism.
Cümle alemlere rahmet. Hay şu yok Sulerimiz hey canım Hey canım saçar şu yoksul elimiz Eyvallah hey hey dost.
The poet describes their humble hand as spreading mercy to all of creation. This line emphasizes the notion that the Sufi, even in a state of apparent poverty or humility, is a source of divine mercy and compassion to all beings. The poor hand symbolizes humility and selflessness, qualities that allow one to act as a channel for God's mercy. This verse conveys that true richness lies not in material wealth, but in the ability to bring blessings and compassion to others, regardless of one's own worldly state.